So this is going to be the last session of module 5. Post by this session, there will be a case study discussion in the upcoming class, and followed by that there will be a recap session which is going to be planned in the next two classes. Getting into today's topic. So in the last session we discussed about WTO, trade related investment measures, and the consolidations of all the activities which is related to the business model, revenue model, and expenses model, making all the consolidations which is into the logistics and supply chain is up to the mark of evaluating the reconciliation statements of different vibrant functions. Say, like example, I need to go through the data warehouse of a particular industry, to what extent they may produce the next batch of quantity. I may go for a new visioning statement stating that how it is going to significantly make sure that trade related investment measures are localized. I repeat the term, the trade related investment measures are localized with the help of content requirement and making the government to prohibit some unnecessary entry to the global market. So, predominantly speaking, this unnecessary entry, in the sense, it has been forced to do some companies integration without their interest or without their venturing capitals, and that might lead to imbalances and trade blocks. So the reason for trade block is LCR. So this LCR, what we are going to analyze, is directly related to the one which is being connected to the trade blocks. So when we analyze the trade blocks of every company, of every establishment, it is better for us to understand the prohibited area which is not allowed for open entries. So, nationally speaking or domestically speaking, the freedom of operations, that is a margin of safety or the degrees of freedom, what we call in management, is usually operated from the restricted firm to the firm which is having proportionality. Say, like example, if I have a firm with the two or three partners running the business with the localized requirements, that is LCR, I may forecast the trade block, or I may discover how the trade block will be. Based on the requirement, I may go for a reconciliation statement and as well as further discoveries. But provided these inputs might not be sufficient for me to take a new iteration, and that could possibly affect business outgo. It may not freely go out, investigate, or compare with the other establishment so as to identify the qualitative survey. So that will be the ground rule for further discovery and exploration. The significance of trade related investment measures is directly related or directly proportional to the investment which are all directly made by the foreign people. There comes the freedom of operations, there comes the margin of safety, supply chain efficiency, managerial efficiency, and favorability towards all the allocated departments of a particular firm. And that gives the exact outcome to identify the trade balances. That is trade to trend and the practices to policy, what we discussed in the previous sessions. On the whole, when I try for understanding the direct marketing with respect to the factors, with respect to the consolidational effects, it is not giving me a trade segment for me to take a decision which is directed for regulatory costs and as well as irregulatory elements which are all indirectly related. I cannot identify those irregulatory elements because those elements might not be the sufficient factors for me to take a right standard. But whenever it is unrestricted, I may enter further. So those decisions, those plays ourselves. Competitiveness and the market stability will make us to understand what are all the participating in order to evaluate options and prejudices of investments and to discuss the request given by the other countries, which are all maintained on a balanced scale. So those balanced scale maintenances and other factors which are all mostly preferred or mostly connected to this particular price competitiveness, and that price competitiveness is directly again connected to this particular element of understanding the global standards. So the price competitiveness is directly connected to global standards with the help of LCR. So all the LCRs has to be identified primarily, taking the right directions of LCRs. The host nation force the foreign firms to buy some localized materials and they try to import it and they match the levels of satisfaction what they had with the exported good, and that becomes a regulatory cause. And after understanding the effects of marketing and its unrestrictedness, the price competitiveness increases slowly. After making the price competitiveness increases slowly, we need to understand what are all the alterations we have, how I can balance the trade blocks, how I can compensate the trade blocks with the help of trade generative ideas or adaptive ideas or discursive, which is in the open forum. How many open forum meetings are conducted for taking a trade related decision? So these are all the queries every trading person or a vendor will have with respect to global market, domestic market, or even a divisional market. Irrespective of the volume or the mass of the population, we have the problem of maintaining the equilibrium. Underline the word maintaining the equilibrium is the toughest task in promoting markets across borders. So, first of all, if I would like to take a decision on the parameters and the promotional, it is giving me a clarity that the region based, the verticals of the business will make me to understand what are all the tough times I had. And based on I'm going to take a new decision, which is again balanced on significance of and based on take a vital decisions of how WTO is going to take a strategic direction. So the premises, the public premises, what I had with the private premises, what I was supposed to be, both are parallelly nurturing me to identify the right group, the right agreement, the legal, ethical, transparent agreement has to be made for strengthening the trade relationships, understanding the proceedings and the consequences, identifying the consequences of agreement, whether it is positive or negative, we don't know, but we are taking a trial and error methodology and we are identifying the opportunities and the difficulties. There are two things finally we can strategically identify. One is difficulty in the opportunity, and the other one is opportunity in difficulties. The second one is going to be the progressive one. That is identifying the opportunity in the difficulty is going to be the progressive one, which majority of we people are not supposed to do because we see only the difficulty, not the opportunity. So that ruins the strategic decisions. So the methodological identification, the strategic decisions, and the problematic behavior and the circling options what we have will always make us to sit and think about how the trade practices are going to get planned and how I can rise with a new trade block. Again, it is going to give me a problem, and that problem is going to be an opportunity in the future cycle, and finally, it is going to be done by us. We are strong on it. But when it is coming as an opportunity to us, we are expecting some comfort zone and we are not coming out of the comfort zone. And that leads to the problem. So, on understanding these problems and scenario, let me pose a basic question. What could be the common effect of trade related investment measures? So, when I focus on those host countries, how I can elevate or how I can promote these kind of business, the option A, B, C, D are provided. I need your answers. Option A talks about the prohibition. B stands for the mandate requirement of the foreign firms. And the C option talks about the trade distorting, that is eradication of reductions of trade problems, discrepancies, and the immediate requirement to adopt a single global currency for all the transactions. So these are all the purpose of it. So I need your answers in the chat box, whether it is for option C, option B. Fine. The reduction in trade distorting investment requirements. So, since the question talks about effect, so when we talk on effect, that is after implementation, option C is fine. So when I talk about the other options, the prohibition of all the foreign direct investment, which cannot be made on single criteria, it has other criteria, so it could not be the common effect. It could be one of the effect, but it could not be the common effect. And the second option is the ability to mandate that foreign firms use 100% local content. That is highly impossible. And we cannot say 100% it is localized. We may have LCR, but it is limited to a particular number. And that number varies from one company to other company because not to lose their originality. So option B is also ruled out. When I come for option D, single global currency. So that was made as a digitalizational financial capability across all the transaction rather than barter economy and monetary economy. We may provide some critical zones and the investment to adopt a single global currency. That was also practically impossible, but people had a huge mindset of adopting all the points in the frame, but it was not adhering to the agreement of trade related investment measure. So that was not a possible element. So option C was the predominant version of reduction of trade distorting investment requirement, which was imposed on foreign companies. So, in analyzing this particular question, what made me choose a diversified business environment? Whether the diversified business environment is affected by exporting or foreign direct investment. So the entry mode, that's what I identified. The entry mode, what we had with the successful participation, is operationally different because the entry mode, what we had or what we had the assumption is irregular to the capitalization of the risk and the capitalizations of other foreign elements, which are all non adaptable. I repeat, the non adaptable elements are mostly selected for entry level and exit level practices of trade. When it is trying to localize the market, the global goal, not only in domestic people or the global people as a single entity, the common international global goal is to adapt your product and fitting to the cultural norms while maintaining your core brand. So when I focus on the core brand, either it is a pharmaceutical good or based on how many times the pharmaceutical good is coming out of a market, whether it is an emergency product or a fast moving consumer good, irrespective of any product or any service, what we had an experience of transacting in the market is adaptable to your local cultural norms. That should be the primary element. Then only I can identify or I can seek possible customers or the consumers to those products and services. So when it is leveraged, on one particular segment or the other particular compliances, the most possible source components which is violating the regional brand is rules of origin, rules of cultural expected product, and rules of undercoveraged most cited product. For example, the most cited product, Britannia Jim Jam. If I would like to travel this product to the most peak country, say for example German or Europe from India, introducing our Jim Jam, Britannia Jim Jam to the other people who are all not experiencing those high products, will have the successful participation. They will make the same brand of taste or the characteristics in a different category, or they have a different vision of envisioning the Jim Jam into a different perspective. So across borders, we may have different thought process, different make or buy decision process, make different policies, different opportunities, and different advantages. So we may not think in such a way to adapt the product and the other maintainability of the core brand, which is significantly varying. So when I focus on the significant considerations of trade-related investment measures and standards, protecting your claimable elements are most important, and that is possible with the help of IPR, intellectual property rights. Those intellectual property rights are leveraged from your control, not from my control or not from your control. It is leveraged from the producer's control, which is standardized based on domestic market and as well as the foreign market. So the adaptation of the product and the learner's insight as a raw layman, getting into the market, understanding the trade practices, adhering to the state practices, and then taking a decision is something new and compared with the trade related investment measures or just leverage the help of host controllers like you people. Those host controllers must take a wider decision in order to execute the policies of the market. So, what could be the policy and what could be the practices of the market? How it can identify the limitational process and the limitational elements of taking a vital decision. So, the roadmap clearly identifies how many times the market may vary from one company to other company, how it is originated, and who are all the originators, influencers, communicators, guide based on the influencers, communicators, and the guides who are all regulating us will lead us to know what are all the opportunities available internationally, multilaterally, and market significance are more predominant out of it. So the market significance can be adhered, can be analyzed because it is not one time of significance. If I take a market, it will be flexible for me, and I cannot say the same flexibility will be there for you because the application varies from you and me. The analysis of the implementation varies from you and me, and the agreements are not regionally connected because it has significance based on their multilateralism, regionalism, and trade blocks. In a group, in a trade group, not all the people are common to each other. They have dissimilar ideas. Those dissimilar ideas will make a TRIMS agreement overviewing with the help of trade related measures. And those specific effects may have adverse effects also or favorable effect also, which is highly uncertain and based on the loop what we experienced in the previous phase, the upcoming loop will be there. The expansion of the market and the strategic market will vary. We have R&D people to whom I'm coming and asking for query. They come and analyze. They come and evaluate. The trade frameworks are varying from one team to other team. How I can ensure the practices and the policies of those markets. So whether the markets, whether the survey, whether the entire agenda are clearly identified or not, these many queries I need to answer. I may not take an immediate decision which is because of taking a poor study, and poor study is because of understanding it from the scratch. So those scratch, those identification, those selection will never reveal the practices are up to the market standard. That up to the market standard is because of one who is understanding the business from the different perspective. Whether you or me are connected to a business varies from one individual to understand the role of WTO varies for Hariharan and varies for Mr. X or Mr. Y or Mr. Y. Because internationalization is legally connected, regulatory frameworks are legally connected, the compliances must be adhered with the guide, there should be a rule book, there should be a study manual that should focus on the criticality of the function, identify the methodology of the function, spotting the values of the function, and then it is emerging to the international market. Just like that, I cannot enter into a market, and that will make us to get into a wronger direction. So the preferences, what I'm going to have is based on the restricted rules of origin. So geographically speaking, I have a lot of possible people who are all well connected to me. But indirectly speaking, I may not have that much possibilities in understanding it from the layman's perspective. So not all the segments are connected without a barrier. There might be some barriers, and there might be some standard operative procedure. There are some barriers to trade. There are lack of alignments. So how to identify and how to predict it clearly? If I'm going today for a trade assignment, how I can assume the trade assignments are created in a curative manner and advantageous manner the last week or the last month based on the restricted rules of origin. So the complex criteria reveals the nationality of the product. I can get a maroon from Thuthukudi district. It is a nationality of that particular regionalism. So if I take a sweet, which is mostly preferable in Tirunelveli district, which is because of their own regionalism. So the trade concessions will have predominant versions of preferential market access. If I go for milk sweet, Srivilliputtur is a place meant for milk sweets, which is highly reciprocated on trade concession because there is no associated elements with respect to that particular division. So across divisions and across districts, we have specialized elements where I can go, where I can monitor, where I can segment the market, where I can understand the complex criteria of the market varies from one individual to other individual. There are nearly, as I told in the previous sessions, there are nearly 200 plus 300 vendors of silk worms, silk weavers in Kanchipuram district. But how many of them are virginal? How many of them are giving their maximum outcomes without any reciprocation or trade blocks? How many of the silk weaver traders are not having trade blocks? Very few. We can easily count them because trade blocks are everywhere. There are demerits of because of trade blocks. So the complexities in trade block is agreement is not formalized with the supply chain because of poor silkworms or because of poor accumulation of required raw materials for weavers. We may not get the sufficiency and the outcome of the silk weaving capability and the benefits of that agreement will not be proper. So we cannot blame anyone stating that because of this, the trade is getting affected. So at that point of time, I should go for an alternate element. And that alternate element may fix your problem, but not give a solution to your problem. So that fixation of the problem is not a issue. The solution to the problem is an issue. So how to go for the solution of the problem, whether it is implied or not, I need to take a random decision of thinking what kind of solution I need. Because identifying opportunity in marketing is what a problem should prioritize. So when I start prioritizing it, what are all the problems I may face? Assumption of successful domestic product, or focusing on the countries, which is identification of legal system, or physical distance from the home office, gap between the local consumer needs and available products. So what could be the opportunity lag in this particular question? I need your options. Which are all the opportunity lagging element where we are not prioritizing and which should be most prioritized? Thank you, sir. Evaluating the gap between local consumer needs. How the gap can be evaluated and what are the tools we have for evaluating? Very simple. There is one and only tool, reliable tool. There are tools available, but as of me is concerned, I need a reliable tool as a vendor. That reliable tool is collecting first and primary data. So that primary data significantly varies in 2022 with respect to 2026. And we may expect a sharp change in 2031 because consumers are expecting as of comfort zone with respect to every 5 years. Every 5 years, everything changes, irrespective of government, irrespective of strategy, irrespective of preferences of market, taste, color changes, characterization changes, everything. So the opportunities are also changing. Only if I make myself enhanced with the upskilling elements, I can survive in this global market or the global competition, which is automatically directing me. So the gap between the local consumer needs and the available products is what most important thing. If the gap is zero, fine. If the gap is minus 10 or minus 15, what we can do? That's the question mark. So the gap is negative zone. If it is in positive zone, we may cope up or we may give an alternate. There's no problem. If the gap is in negative, what we can do? If the gap is in negative, the only thing is we are in the wrong floor. So we need to either climb up or we need to exit. Since the lift is in basement, either I should come to first floor, get down from the ramp and I should go out, or I should get down at the basement itself. Because stucking in between the lift is something critically problematic zone for all the consumers and the users, upcoming users. It affects the queue. That is what the barrier is. Just assuming myself getting stuck in a lift, having a problem for more than 2 hours, it is affecting the queue. It is affecting the other consumers who are all supposed to use it, who are all totally eliminated from the selection because of poor responses what we had in the previous iteration. As everyone have this experience, if someone goes and attend an interview, the one who is sitting outside will come and interrogate with the one who have attended earlier, and they will give a falsy statement. The interview is tough. They're asking complicated question. But as soon as I enter into it, as soon as I see the comfort zone, the chamber is mine. So the barriers are not available or not present defaultly. It has been an artificially generated barrier. So the artificial generated barrier is because of poor disputes, poor problems, and poor considerations what we had with the elimination of poor selections. Those favorable and non-favorable problems are not understood or not addressed by the expert. If someone is coming and addressing the problem who is no way connected to me, because this department is different and my department is different, he don't know what is the difficulty in my department. So the rules varies. If a professor from electronics and communication engineering comes and handles the problem of department of mechanical engineering, what could be the justification they can provide? They can say the same production is because of electronic item. I'll say the same production is because of kinetic energy. Similarly, in business also, one who is coming and handling the problem must have all the dimensions and disciplines of idea. Then only we can avoid this dispute, trade barrier, and economic sovereignty, which is highly demanded today. And majority of business are getting closed. And that those closure of business is highly supplementary and most preferably these kind of issues are suppressed, and those suppressed elements are not just connected to the system but also making a problematic area. So those problematic area also hide, also make sure that you people are taking a vital decision towards segmental behavior. I repeat, segmental behavior is again connected to the zone which is disturbed by the channel interferences. So that kind of disturbances can be eradicated with the help of intelligent systems, and those intelligent systems must enable the most important global market into the market research. And those market research or identification of opportunity alone, but along with there should be a competitive landscape taking us to forward. So taking it forward is not just an easy task. I may not have the same predominant version of new aspect of business. I may go for a different analysis because the engine and the other colloidal motions are varying from me to other trader. The competitive consumers reliability will not be same for me to take away the engine into the demographical shifting. There are high terrain vehicles, heavy terrain vehicles, there are light motor vehicles, there are heavy motor vehicles, and all the vehicles engine is not same. For heavy terrain vehicles, we need some most important or most powerful horsepower engine. Similarly, for market, we need even 10,000 horsepowers and 1,000 horsepowers at the same time. And we should be very clear that where we should use 10,000 horsepower engine and where we should use 1,000 horsepower engine. That is most important. In not all the areas we may go for this strategies and most important data what we had with the supporting elements. And preferably we need to take an analysis versus market supporting data. So there must be a dependability between criteria, cost, communication. What kind of criteria I'm going to have with market, what are all the costs incurred, and what are all the communication which is shifting me, which is pushing me down because of poor market research. If I don't have a proper market research in me, I may lose the market competition, and that will eradicate the total demography into the new zone. And probably I may not be in a situation to go through the data which is highly competitive. So the executional part and the next level capitalizations of markets will surely reconfigure the entire entry system. So the entry level markets and the exit level markets will make us to identify the specific legal dimensions which are all complying to the reconfiguration of the supply chain will surely give you a confident and the maturity to identify the opportunities which are all uplifted. So you can easily uplift whether the markets are uplifted or not, you can easily check it out. So once after checking it out, you can easily understand how the business are mostly into balances. So the balancing capability, what we are supposed to do, has to be done. There is no second opinion about it. It has to be completed, and possibly we may take a new decision for understanding it from the urge of the emergency for taking a new affiliations that is governing towards target and the supply chain which are all non-compliances with the trade related measures and as well as the agreement and the tariff rates all are to be analyzed. Once after analyzing this particular element, the purpose of business and the purpose of activities are mostly in contact with business. So those business survey, those analysis, those cultural aspects, all are just like that taken into control by the example of trade barriers. So the exact example for trade barriers is to identify the business impacting function and making it and taking it forward to the new scope of business, which is based upon successive planning. And that successful planning will make us to understand who are all the specific identifiers of trade block, which are all justified by the target. So the global market next to the domestic market, all are supposed to have some competition within them. Whether the competition is giving them a clarity or not, it is secondary. First thing, it has to be analyzed from the executional steps. Then only they can justify the supply chain is giving a compliances towards market, so that we may increase the tariff or not. We can sense it from consumers' requirement. The consumer needs are to be justified. Then only we can justify the governances and other justifications are done in the right direction. We can slowly reduce the trade block. We may not totally eradicate the trade block. As like we do a bypass surgery, we may just make them alive for another 3 or 5 years or maximum of up to 10 years. That is just stopping and propagating the ideas and extending their tenure. It is not like giving a guarantee they can live up to 25 or 30 years extra. It is highly impossible for us to give a target stating that based on the bypass surgery, what I have done, it may go up to 25 years later. No, there is some emerging market, and that is the precautionary measure what we have taken. As like tariff behavior, we need to take a precautionary measure. And that precautionary measure might vary from every individual and take a vital direction to take a new scope of business elements. So, on the whole, when I go for a literal survey of differentiation, we may the barriers, we may take a identification, we may go for execution, all are fine. But when it comes to problem of a specific legal dimension, it is resilient to market. It is resilient to configuration. And there are provisional allocations for markets based on their growth alone. Irrespective of their growth, they have infrastructure maturity, they have political economic instabilities, they have differentiations in markets, survey, portfolio check, security analysis. Everything has to be done as a post implementational concepts. Those post implementational concepts will have maximization towards preferences, and that will reduce the error rate, and that will filter the poor understanding of the market rate that we talk about in internal rate of return and what are all the net present value what we have. So here we discuss on how mostly preferred towards IRR, that is internal rate of return, is highly supposed to be the significant limitations of capitalization of international prospects. And we need to analyze the net present value of every product what I'm supposed to be having in that particular scenario, because the tariff rates varies, the marketing tactics are varying. We are experiencing a sharp shift between the demand and supply. That sharp shifting will evaluate towards specific legal dimensions. So those dimensions will govern, will take us a right direction, will guide us, will make us to stop poor marketing. So these things can be done in a better prospective manner for taking a vital scope of business action. So those business action, those predominant functions are also well connected, possibly maintaining the wholesome understanding of all the growth towards screening, towards problem solving, or towards scope of game theory. Let me give an example for this. So when I go for an example on gaming theory, the quantity or the quantification or the quantity analysis, whatever we call it out, the quantitative technique what we implement with the queuing or a probabilistic model or inventory model or investigation, what are all the quantity related investigations we are supposed to do, has to be done as a pre-implementation survey, as like what we call it like pilot study. So those pilot study has to check whether the capital market to the industry or the firm is rightly governing the frameworks of systematic executions. I repeat, the frameworks of systematic executions is the most internal rate of return chances within the parameter called systematic screens. Whether it is audited or not, I need to check it out. For every bundle of 30 scripts, a teacher will take 3 or 4 papers, check whether it is adhering to the answering value or not. Why I am giving 7 marks out of 13 marks has to be understood. Similarly, for trading, why I make this volume of cost as 1,000 rupees per unit, I should justify. I should grow based on existing infrastructure and maturity. There is no secondary thought about it. But provided I need to have a legal opinion about whether it is governed or not. If not, I need to take a new study towards global market. So, taking it forward, the possibility of the global market will dependably analyze functionalities are highly connected to the most influential markets, most influential connects, and giving a poor understanding about who are all the job seekers and who are all the job creators. It is as simple as when it is making a right barrier or economic sovereignty, what we discussed in the previous slide, it has to be noted down with the economic understanding. That is what the rules of the road is what mentioned in the last frame. So when it is rightly opted from the region or the reduction or the perusal, which are all pursuing their ideation universally without a restriction, without a barrier, that is comprehensively connected to the next most important regional analysis. That is what mentioned here as demographical shift, which is proactively identifying a new opportunity and very keeping end in mind, which are all the latest seven habits. As everyone people be aware about the latest seven habits, what we are supposed to adhere to the global markets today, being proactive and being most implemented analysis between how the entire understanding is being keeping end in mind and what are all the eligibility of setting a goal or how to get a mutual benefit or exclusive benefit communication along with self improvement. So putting things first with the win-win situation, what we call it, like you also should win, I also should win. And first one to understand and to sharpen their ideas with the synergy. So as people are checking out by seven habits, the most important seventh habit is checking out with the synergical data or giving a win-win situation or keeping end in mind. I should know what is my end. So as of now, what are all the things I'm going to doing today will determine my end. So that determination of my last point, obviously known for my deployment. There is no second opinion about my end because keeping end in mind is nothing but capitalization or reconfiguration. So end in mind is most important quotation to be start with the capitalization. And the next most important thing is proactiveness. So how much proactive you are with respect to trading. So proactive in the sense I need to know understand of business portfolio and business protocols across variations, across disciplines to maximize my tariff, to maximize my benefits, to maximize my mass volume and productions. So these are all the curative ideas, alignment, affiliation to start my own understanding. So all the analysis can be made with the help of effective habitual functions. And there are some frameworks which is being built on consistency and permanency. We call it like CP rule. That is also a most important question in your module. Consistency and most preferably permanency we are going to. That is consistency. So most consistent and most permanent CP rule is identification of right trade for right trader. So the trade becomes the trend. That is most important question in this module. The trade becoming the trend is highlighted. What are all the consistency and as well as permanency in trading. This CP rule, what is my habitual function, what are all my liabilities, how to collaborate with the growth function, and these abilities will make how I'm going to make a team. That is, inspiring a team is not that easy for a trader. So, being a trader or a marketer internationally, organizing those meetings, putting things first, keeping people engaged, analyzing, maintaining a rapport or empathy, very good bridging between competitors. So these things are done managing people effectively. So we are all learning MBA, experiencing management MBA just to manage people, understand the process, keep the purpose strong. So managing people is obviously going to be the routine rule. There is no compromisation about it. But the other two process, understanding the process is something tough for someone and easy for someone. It is like it takes different time for different people, and we cannot give a standard definition for understanding process. I may do it in 2 minutes, and someone can do it in 20 minutes, or someone can do it in 2 hours. So the emerging people will have trade functions in different screening, different process as well. So taking things in mind and putting things in function first, giving a win-win situation is also so these seven rules cast it, and they cannot overtake this rule because these rules are manifesting your trade practices. The manifestation of the trade practices across localized trade, global trade, and market through the most important core functional area. That is again, most importantly, we talk about CP rule. So that CP rule is again how much consistency and how much eligibility towards permanency we are going to make it out. That is the most important term. You can make a note of it. And next to CP rule, we must know how to eradicate or how to manifest the triple P ideation. So manifestation of identification of triple P. This manifestation of triple P is the again important core element. So taking all these functions and putting all the legal dimensions into a shell to give a conclusion on this fifth module. So let me conclude in three aspects. Number one, alignment to misalignment and misalignment to alignment, vice versa. Number two, growth oriented business operations slash market operations. Number three, capital can be from any source, but it should have accountability. Capital investment can be from any source. Since it is talking about international market, it is from any source. We can justify with the help of compliances. We can talk about preferences, but only one rule is it should have accountability. And that accountability can be predicted and assessed with the help of agreements, maximizations of benefits, minimization of wastages and scraps, balancing of people, process, purpose. That is what triple P. Being engaged in administrative personals. So we can add up and we can queue up a lot of things. But when you enter into a firm which is listed and which is restricted to certain parameters, you must adhere to those parameters alone. If they give you a problem scenario, if they ask you for a solution, you may broaden it. But when it comes to a problem of that particular specific function, please govern, please take a remedial action for that particular situation, avoid reconfiguration. At the extreme case, we can reconfigure because the reconfiguration, the word, the term is very easy. But once it is reconfigured, we may not give a comeback or we may not give the same impression what we had in the previous iteration, and that will disturb the entire platform. So the maturity what I should suppose to have for international connect of market is engaging the global market to the localized requirement LCR, has to be the most preferential term for understanding localization also possible in global market, but it is to a certain limit. Say, for example, if I have 100 units, I may have 10 percentage of local materials into the international markets. I may have, even for a safety production, I may have 10 percentage of my local raw material for manufacturing a brand worth of around 200 or 300 rupees of a safety pin. Just I'm taking it for 10 rupees. If I'm inculcating 300 or 500 rupees for a safety pin, also it is globally marketed and people are supposed to get it out because the capital is from different source. If I give a chance of getting a safety pin in some other foreign country for about 500 rupees per pin, also people are ready to go for it. Say the same bunch, if I'm getting it in the local market, I may get it for rupees 10. The capitalization varies from safety pin to maximum raw material what I'm going to go for. So irrespective of your pocket and my pocket, it has a various number of screening. And there are a lot of governance issues and there are a lot of prejudices which are all not giving a clarity towards affiliational matters, and targets are also varying. So taking all these into accountability, let me conclude on these three areas based on compliances and based on globalization and localizations, and LCRs are only source to reconfigure your capital, but avoid reconfiguration of supply chain. And that is going to be the one liner conclusion of this module. So with this, I'm closing the session. Any doubts on the session, you may go for. The upcoming session will be on case study and recap. In another two session, we'll be wrapping the entire Edu series of international marketing for logistics and supply chain. So far, 10 episodes have been done. In 11th and 12th, we'll be consolidating the entire syllabus, witnessing case studies and scenario based questions. These are all the possible frames. If any query, you can post your queries in chat box. Any questions or doubts related to discussion? Any doubts? Thank you. Thank you for the response. Thank you.